Ewing,
yes.
let's call her a feminist icon. When you think about her as a strong role model for power, as a powerful woman in fictional narrative, do you ever reflect on her flaws or the parts of her life that you think might challenge that notion that somehow?
No, not at all.
Mm-hmm.
I think flaws are all a part of what makes us all individuals. If I were to go around the room and say, do you have any flaws?
We haven't got time for that.
That's a good answer. Perfect answer. So I think all of those wonderful life experiences are what make you who you are today, good, bad, or indifferent. So I think that dear beloved Sue Ellen Ewing, whom I adore, she's used all of those things, and sometimes doesn't. She uses them for a growth. Sometimes a little slippage. Sometimes, I call it surfing. I feel like we're all on a surfboard, and sometimes we go a little dipping down. Sometimes we're up here, and it's. I think I felt that in the 80s she was the most interesting female character on television because you never knew what she was going to do. Now in 2014, the writers, God bless them all, I love them, they've continued that. So you really don't know what she's going to do, how she's going to react, what she's going to do with that dreaded son of hers.
And maybe the most honest character on television, certainly in the sense that her love for JR was so unconditional. She put up with a lot, and
Exactly.
a lot of women might have said she should have left, she should have done this, but actually love kept her in a dangerous and frightening space.
Of course, and always dysfunctional. And I feel that we are in the business of entertainment, and people say, well, why is she drinking, and why is this? And I remind people that we have a staff of writers who are beyond brilliant, a little dysfunctional. We think, where did they come up with this? This is a great idea. Because we flipped through the pages about a week before. And when I saw that first line, stage direction, Sue Ellen pours that drink and drinks it, my eyes were like this. I was like, what? No, we thought she was finished. But then I took a step back, walked around my kitchen and said, whoa. Got a cup of tea, kept reading the script, and I thought, that's when she would have taken a drink after the love of her life has passed. So I talked to a couple of my friends who were in the program, and they said, yep, that's when it would happen. So we go on, and we never know. We don't know. But they said, well, why are you drinking again? I said, number one, that makes great conversation. The next day after you've seen that episode, everybody, she shouldn't have been drinking. Oh, it was great she was drinking. Yes, we love. So what it's done, like it did in the 80s, they used to call it the water cooler conversation. Now I think it's Twitter and all that.
Yeah.
So I think they've kept that same momentum. And I really, again, I applaud the writers.
And just in terms of the feedback that you get from fans about these kind of moments, I mean, she is so mold-breaking. Like, what were people saying to you back then, and what do people say to you now about her as a character?
It's varied. I heard, and I love to hear the stories. They watched us. We didn't know who was watching us. So it's always fascinating when people do stop and ask. They tell me stories about sitting with their grandmother or their mother and on the couch and watching. And now they're merging the old show and the new show. And so in the first season it was a little tricky because they didn't know the new people and who are they, but Larry was still alive then. And then a lot of people said, well, perhaps when he's gone it won't be the same show. It's a different show. He was this magical, bigger than life character, but he'll always be there as far as I'm concerned. Because he will always have done some bad deed back in 1804. Some great grandfather that'll reverberate over here and make a mess of our lives yet again. So that's what I think. I mean, so his presence will always be there. But a lot of people said, "Oh, we're not going to watch after JR, after Larry Hagman passed." Okay, but it's. I think season 3 is when the switch happened. moments when people say, wow, you know, did you see season 2? All right, well, let's we'll catch up on DVD and we'll do that. And now there's this great momentum, I feel, and season 3 is very, very hot. They've turned up the volume this season.
So Larry's departure was very, very emotional. You know, French loved him very much. Can you share with us one of the conversation you had that remains in your heart with him? Something you can share with us.
Wow, great question. A tough one to answer because there were so many. There were so many. I think what people don't know about him was his generosity. He was so. I remember when we first started working together. I would get in his face arguing. Sue Ellen and JR would be, and he would gently take my shoulders. He would be holding me like this, and he would gently move me like that. So I would be in my light because I would be in his face and going whatever I was doing, and he would gently move me into my light. Now, most actors wouldn't do that. They'd go, okay, let her be in the dark. Who cares? He was gracious and very generous. One story that does stand out in my mind when we were here in the 80s, one of our crew members had an illness and needed a lot of money and hospitalization. We didn't know, the rest of us didn't know, but Larry found out about it and wrote him a check for $15,000. Wow. So Patrick and I didn't know that. We heard the story at his memorial. The crew guy came over and told us that story. So, lovely things about that man that people had their own perception, their own ideas of what he was all about. But I have a very, very special, to answer your question, which I'm not answering very well. The conversation that Larry and I had was always, it was always funny. And I can't remember one conversation because people say, what was the funniest thing he ever did? That again it's sort of strung along. It was kind of a daily thing. And with the conversations, that was kind of a daily thing.
But you didn't answer the question.
Did I? A little long, but
a lot of the TNT promotions this year have involved fire, and a photo has surfaced that looks like Sue Ellen had recently escaped from a fire. Are you allowed to tease anything about that? No.
No, of course not. No, but there is. First of all, I adore all the promos. They were sexy and hot, and I think they did that to say, okay, get ready, turn up the heat, turn up the volume because the Ewings are back. It was very well done. Oil and fire. It was like, yeah, what's happening? What's happening? And it is happening. It amps up. What have you seen? Have you seen?
We've seen the first two.
First two. Yeah. That's what I've seen. But it's kind of there, and then it goes like that, and then we do a very bad tease. We tease you badly, and then there's a hiatus. You won't see anything, and then it starts up again in August or something. But just seatbelt. This is seatbelt time. This is just when you think you figured something out, forget it. We can't even figure it out. We're like Patrick and I call each other. Did you know that's what's going to happen? It's nuts. So everybody is not what you see.
Would you say that the third season is kind of like the third season of the original show, which is when it really came together and started to have cliffhangers, like Sue Ellen driving drunk home and... Not saying that would happen now, but you know what I mean.
Wasn't she pregnant at the same time?
Yes.
And drunk. Naughty. I think season 3 is when it all does come together. I think the writers understand on a deeper level. This is a big cast. There's lots of people, and they keep throwing more people in. So. It's I don't mean shallow, but when you get that many people, you can't have very deep storylines. The original was really a compact family of everybody's character. You knew them well. So I think they had to introduce them. Kind of like, okay, here's this one and this one and this one and this one, this one, and they're with this one and this one and this one, and then they all switch partners and they're with this one and this one and this one. So it's a mess. So by season 3, it's kind of settling down, and the writers have the capacity to go deep with the characters.
What do you think about, I suppose, how Sue Ellen's ethical compass has kind of been set in this series? And by that I mean, if we look at the old Dallas, you know, perhaps because JR played a certain part, and I think Sue Ellen had a great relationship with Miss Ellie and with South Fork and with kind of the heart and soul of the family. In this universe, Sue Ellen is tougher. She's more ruthless, and her ethical compass has shifted a little bit. There's a mother-son dynamic that's powerful and frightening. Do you think she's how different a woman ethically and morally do you think she is?
I think she has wrestled with her demons, and not 100% come out on the other side. But I do feel that when you, when you track her historically, she was born and raised in Texas. She married one of the richest men in Texas, and she knew all of the people that he hung out with. Didn't maybe all the devious ones, all the good ones, but she knew all the players. She knew where all the bodies were buried. She knew all of his tricks, all of everything about him. So that when she left South Fork and went to London with Ian McShane, smart girl, she had a chance to remove herself from the whole Ewing kingdom and figure out what she was doing. Now, John Ross didn't turn out the way she had planned, but she was sober, so she had dealt with a lot of her issues, but she was still a force to be reckoned with. When she did come back, she ran for governor. So clearly, and I remember talking to Cynthia Cedre, our executive producer / writer, before we even began season 1, and I said she has to have changed. If I asked this table, have you changed in 20 years? The answer for all of us would be yes. I didn't want her to come back and be the Sue Ellen of the 80s. She had to have, as all of us here at this table have. We've all changed and moved forward, and maybe wrestled with a few demons, maybe done some introspective work. I think that's all she did, all of those things. That's why she's disappointed in John Ross. It's like, you didn't turn out the way, you're turning out like your father, and I don't like that. So the dynamic between mother and son is fierce and beautiful. Delicious and yummy, all those great things. Okay.
Thank you so much.